just experienced the roller coaster ride of your film.
Awesome.
So sorry, guys.
And this project was actually a little bit of a reunion for you all, right?
Yes. Which is always exciting.
It's why I said yes. I was like, Ashley's doing it. I'm in.
And then I just offered him another one, and he said no.
No, never.
No, it is nice to work with people that you know and create like a comfort instantly, and know that like I know that he's very talented, and I know that he has my back, and so it was nice thing to go into.
It was also kind of fun because the relationship in this movie was the exact opposite that we had in the last film we did. We played like a married couple that was having issues and had to work through a lot of stuff, but like they were like they had this very close, intimate relationship, and so it was kind of fun to come onto a set with an actor that, like Ashley said, that like we trust each other, we've worked together, we understand each other, and then we get to do something that's kind of completely opposite of the last role. So that was actually really fun and enjoyable too.
Yeah, because you're adversaries here. We'll get into that a little bit later. I'm curious about developing that relationship, but let's just brass tacks. How did this movie find its way to you? Was there an audition process? Like, take me through how you signed on.
No, this came through someone I had worked with before, and they said, there's this guy, Chad Archibald, and he's really talented, and you should look at his stuff. He's able to create something really special, and we think he's going places. And so I said, okay, yeah, let me take a look at the script. And I read the script and was instantly taken by the connection that I formed, just because it wasn't this like instant horror slasher film. Like, they really developed these characters and this premise kind of from the jump, so that you got an understanding of who they were, what they did, and how they navigate their life and relationship. And then we kind of added on this layer of supernatural horror to it. And so I just really connected with the script and said, I think that this could be something really cool if the pieces fall into place. And so had a conversation with Chad, and I said earlier today, I think the first time we talked, I think I cried, because I was just like, oh my God, this is what I feel with this character, and his backstory and how the script came about is really meaningful to him. And so it just kind of like, it's nice when these things are easy and they fall into place, and you kind of go, oh, I know that I should be a part of this. This feels good. Yeah.
Meanwhile, Shawn, did you have to go through like 5 auditions?
No, I did not for this one. No, this actually was, again, sometimes you really have to fight for those roles and those parts that you want, and sometimes things just, like Ashley said, sort of fall into place, and that's exactly what happened. I got a phone call saying there's this opportunity to be a part of this film. Ashley's starring in it, and it's shooting in Canada. I'm Canadian, so that obviously is always in my works in my favor, honestly. When you're shooting in Canada, there needs to be some amount of Canadian content, so I was like, yeah, sure, I'll go home.
You're a token Canadian.
Yeah, I kind of was. And
you were the Canadian content.
yeah. Well, there's a ton of Canadian content. Like all the filmmakers, the whole cast except for Ashley, I think.
I was the token American.
Yes, yeah. Let's be clear about that. No, but really, it was an opportunity, and I read the role. I love genre films. I love horror films. I've been in a ton of them. It's something that I really, really enjoy. And the first time reading a script for me is really the purest the experience will ever be, and the only time that I can really put myself in the position of the audience, because after that we make it, we sit on it for a year, and then we see it in the theater, and I'm like, yeah, I'm just remembering where we shot every scene and what the experience was like, and whether I was happy with the scene or not happy with the scene. So the script, just the setup really grabbed me, and then when I realized kind of like the role that I'd be playing, and I thought it was going to be a challenge. Not that playing Randall was like, you come onto screen at like a 10, and then you sort of have to maintain that. There's no backstory, there's no setup. He just kind of flies into the movie. And I wasn't sure how to ground the character when we don't have any reference or backstory to this guy at all. And I talked to Chad a lot about that, and his point of view was really interesting. And I work a lot on creating a backstory for the character. But he was like, imagine it like this. Where Randall steps into frame in this film is the 4th act of his movie. So the first act of this movie is Randall's 4th act. And so together, and because he'd already written this character and really understood it, we like wrote that movie prior to Randall stepping on screen. And that really helped ground me, bringing this character to life, and then also like understanding his choices. I mean, I think he's kind of the villain in a way, or he's an antagonist, but I also didn't judge him and thought this is exactly what I would do for my family. So he's making bad choices, but I could understand those choices. So I tried to sort of enter the character from that perspective.
So what part of his backstory do we not see that you developed?
Well, again, a lot of it is touched upon, like what has happened to his wife. I mean, we see that actually in great detail. But the thing that I thought was interesting, and you just get a taste of it in the scene with Julian Richings, who's the doctor who Ashley's character goes to get the explanation, and he mentions that the wife was a nurse who was abroad, and so the idea was, well, this is something that traveled with her from where we don't know. So that's the kind of part of the story that we started to sort of create, is like this relationship, the travel, the distance maybe they had, like she was there by herself, and so they'd had this distance apart, and then she came home and then steps into this illness and is withering away. So just things like that, like little details. And Chad had really thought about the whole thing, but I just, put a little more specificity for me to sort of understand who he was. And again, it's hard to be like, okay, I'm playing this guy that's sacrificing these women, so it's like, well, how do you not feel like you're a horrible person? But I was like, I didn't want that to be who this guy was. And again, if this movie was through Randall's perspective, he would be the reluctant villain, not like the bad person doing these things. And I was like, I would make these sacrifices to save my son, especially after watching my wife, be taken from me, and have that the next person that in line that I love, like being taken from me from this entity that I don't understand. Like I would probably do some pretty dark things. So
That's kind of what I love about this too, is that it does, I think, make people question morally what they would do in that circumstance. Like you're right that it doesn't just make you out to be this complete villain. Like I think I know Cynthia would do anything for her child. You would do anything for your
would
child.
Cynthia do what Randall did?
Yeah.
All right. Yay.
Yeah, I mean, maybe she would try and find a different way, someone that was like on hospice or something. But
so sensitive of Cynthia.
Yeah, someone that like wanted to go anyways.
Yeah. Well, that's a good idea. Why didn't you think that?
I don't know. It's like you just didn't think this through correctly.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
I missed that detail
If
in
you're
my
going to
preparation.
sacrifice someone, you just got to do it the right way.
Yeah. All right. Fair enough.
I'm glad you're touching on some of the parental themes, and I think one of the other themes in here is grief, and then also taking on your child's pain. And we're all parents up on this stage, so I want to know more about how being a parent, I know for Ashley, for you, to a very young child, how that influenced how you approached your characters and the performances.
Yeah, it was really tricky for me because my daughter was 6 months at the time. It was the first film that I had done post-pregnancy, and I was still breastfeeding. I was very hormonal. And I was trying to figure out the line between one, protecting myself and her, and then being able to deliver what I needed to for this film, and also not fall into the trap of, because especially at that point, like I think your well gets so deep. And it's very easy for me to just like think the worst or connect to like something that it impacts you in a whole different way. Like it's like your heart just like expands. It's hard to really explain to someone unless they've experienced it. But with that, I think I could easily, I think, go overboard with something that this character and this circumstance didn't call for, because when you're in this situation, like a lot of it is adrenaline and shock, and that doesn't necessarily mean tears. And so it was just kind of me going like, okay, let me figure out how to separate these things enough to try and give a full performance of her that's meaningful and that's appropriate for whatever she's going through at that moment.
What about for you, Shawn? I mean, you touched on it a little bit, but being a parent and drawing on that experience in this role.
Yeah. The thing that I actually cued onto earlier when I spoke to Chad. So Chad Archibald, our writer-director, basically wrote this film after both of his parents passed away from cancer. And he was like, this disease was like this entity feeding off of these people. I couldn't stop it. And my dad had just passed away from lung cancer. So when we first talked, I could just relate initially to that. And so there's, in the flashback sequence when Cynthia kind of goes into Randall's head, there's the moment where Randall's watching through the door as his wife passes and the entity gets passed to his daughter. And that was the first scene that Chad and I talked about initially. And he actually was crying while we were shooting that scene because he was like, I was standing at the door watching my parent. You know what I mean? It was very emotional. And he's I often find people that do genre stuff and specifically horror stuff tend to be like very, very sensitive, which you wouldn't expect necessarily from some of the storytelling and some of the intense storytelling. But Chad is like such a sensitive guy, and this was such a personal story. So that's kind of where I first cued into the story, was like a loss of a parent recently. So it made sense. But yeah, then following that trail down to being like, well, you know, what would Randall do? What would I do for my son? And it's like, well, I would do whatever I had to do. Like, that's not even a question. That's not even like, well, you know, how could you make those decisions? Like, the other thing that I liked about this, and we've talked about this today, I don't think that anybody in the film makes a dumb decision. They make bad decisions. But when I read the script, I wasn't like, well, why would they do that? Why would they do, you know? And I think that was important too. So it's like, I could understand this guy because he wasn't making dumb decisions. He was making bad decisions because he's in an impossible situation. So I just was like, yeah, what would I do for my son if I knew this thing was feeding on him, and the only way to stop and not even maybe save him, like just remove that pain from him, even if it's for a day, like what would I be willing to do? And that sort of made sense to me.
On your last project together, you said you played a married couple. This time around, you're very much each other's adversaries. I'm curious about how you build that relationship. Did you guys talk before, like when you're in rehearsal? Or is one of the things like you just stay away from each other because you...
Yeah, we were barely on screen together, to be honest. Like when I saw, you had been on shooting maybe for a week, and I walked on set, and it was
Which is a lot in this film.
Yeah, it was a very short. Yeah, it was like a third of the movie basically was our shot. But I think I walked up and I gave you a big hug, and we took a picture together, and then you were off to shoot, and I was going through hair and makeup and whatever, and then I don't think we talked at all about character or performance. We just kind of were like, hey, what's up?
Yeah, which is cool. Like, I think probably better for it. Not that like either of us are extremely method, but I do think it's like easier if we're not just like, hey, what's up, buddy? Oh my God, I hate you. You know, like it's by nature, the film kind of separated us.
Yeah,
kind of nice.
Yeah. You were on your journey. I was on my journey. We sort of met up in that interrogation scene, and you put the like me on me, and then
what was that?
Me. That's how it felt. Do you remember shooting that?
Yes.
I remember being
I was just like, this is going to look so... It was so hard because, like, in anyone else, you just put your hand up, but you're moving around.
Yeah, I was like, so I'm going to let her do this? And it's like, I literally was handcuffed, but there was that discussion. It's like, well, how much should I fight? And, like, should she grab me behind the head? Like, yeah, which I think we kind of ended up doing. I don't actually remember if you... But I remember that being a thing. I'm like, well, I'm not going to let... I know what she wants to do. I'm literally screaming, don't do it. And I'm like, how much would I fight? Yeah. And it's like, just enough so that she can still do this thing because it has to happen in the story.
It does
so don't overthink it. We'll make it work in the cut. And then there's that awesome moment where you had that contraption where you like fall backwards.
Oh my gosh.
Like, and that was actually like a I don't know, some kind of contraption that you were in that they just put the camera on and you like fell backwards.
Yeah, they just like it's what's so
looked
crazy.
Looked like a torture device. Like
kind of was.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
But it is amazing to see like what we did on set and how it transferred to screen, because some of these things you were just like, what? You're gonna put me in this chair and we're gonna dip back. What?
Yeah. Well,
and then you see the shot and it's one of the coolest things.
And there's no bigger joy than to be on kind of like a smaller independent film and know that it has its limitations, budget, size, time, and then seeing it for the first time and being, oh shit, this looks really good.
Yeah.
Like, and I felt like Chad and his team knew exactly what they were doing, but you just don't know. I mean, sometimes you watch the movie and you're like, oh, the cut doesn't work, or the pacing's off, or the music's not right. When I watched this film for the first time, it was a really accurate interpretation of the script I read.
Yeah.
Because that's what you sign on, right? Oh, the script got to me. Like I felt a certain way. And then often in the process, not due to anyone's fault, sometimes the actors can't get there. Sometimes it's the budget, the timing, the whatever.
Yeah.
By the time you see it, it's like, oh, that's not what I thought we were making. That wasn't the experience I had when I read it. But this was like, to me, felt like a 1-to-1.
Well, this was
it
like
even
very
better,
like
actually.
When you're doing and I felt like after watching it, I was like, this is the experience you hope to have when you do an independent film, is that you hope that like what has been said about these people working around you is true, that the director really knows what he's doing, that the sound is going to turn out, that all the pieces are going to fall together the way that we see them happening in our head. And there's something really fulfilling about doing independent film work. but there's always that chance of going like, well, we have everything stacked against us, right? And then it turns out, and
just may not work.
Yeah, it just may not work, but it totally did. And so it was really, I texted Chad immediately, and I was like, oh my God, you're so talented, and this turned out so great, and I'm just so happy. And so,
and he was like, yeah, I know.
Yeah, he did. He was like,
you didn't believe me?
And no, I had faith, but it's tough.
So then, because both of you have been involved in, let's say, genre films, but on different scales and associated with the big franchises, Twilight, X-Men, and then those little movies, and then now smaller films. I mean, does the work change? Like how you approach it change? Or is it just the playground you get to play on, and like those are the things that
I think there's pros and cons to all of them. And there's something about, for me, like the safety and the camaraderie that usually comes with an independent film, that I feel like enables my performance to heighten. There's also, I think, just for me personally, of going like, we were up against the gun and this wasn't working and we had to pivot here, but like I did it. And like we got through the day, and I'm really proud of what we all did. There's something that's really beautiful in that. Very stressful, but beautiful in that. And then with the bigger budget films, it's nice because you have the time, and that I think you have the ability to get to where you need to be.
We have 6 hours to shoot that one crane shot. You're like, oh, sweet.
Yeah, I got this. Yeah. But there's also that too, where I'm like, again.
Oh, it's so boring. I find it so boring.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I just want the image. Like, where are the $25 million budget films?
Yeah,
or even like 15.
10. I'll do 10. I think you got enough time for that.
Like that would be like the perfect sweet spot, I feel like. Because sometimes when you have too much money, you just have like all of these, you're like, why are you here?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's true. I absolutely loved making all the X-Men films, and literally changed my life. And you get all the equipment, all the effects, all the time, the top tier actors,
all the craft service,
listen, don't even get me started on the craft service. That being said, what I like about independent film, low budget film, is that I feel like there's a more collaborative nature with the filmmakers. I think it's kind of what you're saying. Like, we're all on the same team. We don't have all the tools that we need to necessarily make this thing the way that we all want it to. So we need to collaborate. We need to shift. And also, you can find moments, like, for example, on an X-Men film, in an action sequence, I was like, hey, I feel like this feels weird that I'm doing this. Like, can I do this? And they're like, no, because we've already designed the animatic and the effects are halfway done. So you actually can't do that because that Sentinel is not going to be there. It's going to be right here. And I was like, oh, okay. And that's fine. You know that you're working in that playground, but it's stifling to a certain degree, but you're also like, okay, but that's what it is. Like, it's fine. It's not like, well, I can't shoot ice out of my hand if I can't do it over here. It's like, no, you do what, but that's the kind of thing that I find, and that's what I enjoy about an independent film, is like, if something's not working, we pivot, we make it work together. And it's similarly to like a network television show. It's like, you cannot change a line because that needs to be sent up the ladder to the studio because they've approved the script, so they have to approve the change. The network needs to approve the change, and then the writer on the day has to approve the change. So it's like, it's not worth it, and it will never happen in time. So it's like, sometimes you're like, this
that would
line
be really
is
tough for me.
It is. It is tough. But also, I will say this, like, talking about like process and the muscle that you use and different independent film, big budget films, network television, they all require a different approach and a slightly different muscle. And so you learn to make it work. It's like, sometimes you're like, it's easy to change it. I don't feel it. I want to change it. And it's like, and even if it's not working, but you're like, well, I'm forced to make it work. And sometimes you find that you're more malleable, and you have to work a little bit harder to make that line work. And it's not like the line's not right. It's just, it doesn't flow out of my mouth. Like, it doesn't feel right. Well, you can't flip those words. So figure out a way to make it work for you. And sometimes that's the job. That's the gig. That's what you have to do. And there is a certain like discipline in just having to make it work. And I'm like, I don't want to look like I have egg on my face. I'm not going to be like, well, fuck it, whatever. I'll just say it and get it out because they won't help me change the line.
I'm going to make it great. As
yeah,
great as I can do
always,
it. Like this coach I was telling you about, that's one of her big things is she's like, listen to the text, right? Yeah. And so instead of going like, I want to change this and I want to do this and I think this and whatever, she's like, no, the person wrote this for a reason. And it's such a, it's like an ego hit, right? Where you're like, but I think this, and she's like, well, it doesn't matter. We're gonna make this
Who
work.
gives
But
a
it's,
shit what you think?
yep. But it's such a
You're not the writer.
it was but I love that approach to it too, because I'm
Yeah.
like, you know what? It's a different like skill set. It's a different muscle.
You're slightly more structured, and you're forced to kind of like solve the problem, as opposed to just be like, well, I just want to change it because I'm not happy with it.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes it is frivolous. It's like, well, this doesn't make sense to me, so I want to do it. But there are times where, you know, you're shooting a scene. And for me specifically, it's like, if there's a scene where a character that I'm playing is written that they break down. Mm-hmm. Now, the big thing is like, well, if you force it, it can look like crap. But if that's what is intended in the script, and it's like there's a catharsis for the character, and like breaking down really makes sense, that's what I want to do. And sometimes it's even a matter of like switching lines or saying something in a different way that sort of grounds you right in that moment, that connects you to then that next line where you fall apart. Right. And so it's nice if you're shooting an independent film and you're like, for whatever reason, it's not about the script isn't working or it wasn't written well, but I can't connect to that. But if I say it like this, or there's this memory that I have that if I just even say it slightly differently or flip those two lines, it actually hits me harder and allows me to then get to that place that we want to. It's like, yeah, sure, do whatever you want, like however you need to get there. So there's something nice about that too. Yeah. But you don't always have that. So you kind of have to figure it out sometimes.
Someone who could do both, you know?
Yeah, try to be.
As a writer, this is mostly music to my ears. Because we are in an audience of your peers, of other actors, and you touched a little bit on this, Ashley. I want to talk about craft and how you all keep your skills up if you're between projects, if you're transitioning to another project. What do you do to keep your skills up as an artist?
Well, I think there's such an importance of continuing to sharpen your tools and grow. I think, someone said to me recently, like, well, if you want to build muscle, don't you work out every day? Or if you want your heart to be healthy, don't you run every day? Like, why do we as actors?
Absolutely not. No.
Well,
who's running not with these knees?
If you want your heart to be healthy, if you want to be the best.
I will fast walk.
Like with anything, it's like, why do we expect to be able to be the best if we put it down for 6 months? Why are we not continuing to try and grow? And also, why are we taking on an art form and then going like, oh, I have the solution and I have the blueprint and this is what works? Where I think part of the beauty of what we do is that like it's ever changing and evolving and it ebbs and it flows, and who you are now is not who you were 10 years ago. So like, why are you banking on this thing still working now? And also like, who says I know everything? Like I certainly don't. And so I find it really, especially more recently, fascinating to like go and do things that scare me and go like, this is completely different than my method of how I work, and I'm probably I'm gonna suck at this, but like go ahead and embrace that, because eventually it will make you a better actor. It will make you better at what you can do. It will give you the ability to go like, I'm just gonna say it like they want me to say it, and I'm gonna learn how to navigate it. Or you know what? I took a writing class and now I feel like I could maybe sharpen this up and make it more in the character's voice if perhaps the writing doesn't support that. Like, I just think that we have endless opportunity to be able to grow. And so for me, I'm like, I'm going to take the opportunity. And the other thing is, I think I mentioned, maybe not, but my daughter was 6 months when I did this film. It was the longest that I had ever been off set from me getting pregnant and her being born. And it was really tough. For me, it all felt rusty and unusual because I hadn't done it in so long. And so I had to like really work through that. And like, that's not something you want to be working on set. Like, that's something you should be working on at home when you're not on set, So I'm for it. Keep growing.
I think of this a couple ways. First of all, I'm never sharper than when I haven't been working and I'm auditioning a ton. Oh my God!
What is wrong with you?
No, I'm like if I'm hungry, like if I haven't worked and I'm like, fuck, I need to get on set, and also like I'm auditioning all the time because it's like it comes in quick. I can't overthink it. And it's a different character every day. Like I am on fire. Like if I book a pilot, for example, I'm gonna kill it. Because I just spent the last 3 months doing 5 auditions a day, screen testing, not getting it, disappointed, emotional, pick myself up. Like I just have this fire in me, and I hate to audition. That's
what I'm. But we'll keep going.
Yeah. So I don't like to audition. I find it painful. I find it challenging. I find it difficult. And if it goes on for like 8 months, I don't book something, then I start to get defeated. But I will say, like coming off of a streak where I'm like not working and I'm auditioning a ton, I feel like I'm really, really sharp when I come back on set. That's just me.
I think when you're auditioning, then that's considered working on your
Oh, 100%.
craft, right? But
Yeah.
I'm saying, like, what I was saying is, like, there's, like, I felt like the beginning of this year there was not very many auditions.
Right. So
And
you're between auditioning, like
yeah,
class
because
or whatever.
auditioning is the best.
Oh my
Or, I
God,
mean, it's
yeah.
the worst and the best at the same
Yeah.
time.
But yeah, so but if I'm not on a set working like as a paid actor or whatever, that I love. Actually, I don't love it, but I love the results of that. And the other thing that I like to do is, and we talked about this kind of in the green room, is like work on different mediums. Working on a network television show is way different than working on a studio film, is way different working on an independent film. We talked a lot about that. So I like to sort of mix that up, and I don't have one that I prefer over the other. I mean, I do think independent film is where like I really, really love to work amongst its challenges, but like being on The Rookie for the last 8 years, the amount of
Congratulations, by the way.
yeah, I mean it's
amazing.
Great.
it's
Yeah.
insane. But just the sheer amount of work, like time on camera, on set with the same actors, working as an ensemble, working with familiar directors, like there's something that you're just now the trap is like you can just get used to playing that character over and over again, and you're like, well, this is what it is, and you kind of lazy is not the right word, but it's just like this is what is being asked of you. And I used to think like, oh, I'm going to try and create all this stuff, and it doesn't actually work. There's like a tone to a show. There's a tone to your character. I want to always keep it alive and have ideas for myself, but trying to branch out or go too far off, even in my own little world, if the lines are staying the same, it doesn't land the same way. So that's kind of something that I try to do for myself. And then the other thing that I've gotten into in the past, and I know that there's SAG has sort of an issue right now. We're trying to work through it. Is working in video games like. Mocap is like a whole other performance level that I actually love. It's sort of like black box theater. You're like on a sound stage with nothing there. You got actors, you're in like leotards with like weird head cameras on.
All the ping pong balls.
Yeah, all the stuff. You do your T-pose, but there's nothing else there. And the other thing that's interesting is, and I didn't know until I had done it, is specifically for video games, you record the scene until it's perfect because there's so much data that's being mined and recorded that you don't get. It's not like it's time for Ashley's close-up or this is the 2-shot. You guys shoot as actors the whole scene together, and you don't print one until everyone's perfect, and that's it. And then once you get that take, they can cut in to all the close-ups. So that one take is what you
Like a one shot, like
it's a one shot.
One shot, yeah.
And so you can but you get to rehearse, you get to work together, and you guys are leaning on each other. It's not like, well, I dropped my line in that one, but it was Ashley's close up, so it's on her, it's fine. It's like, no. If you drop the line, we all have to go back and do it again. So there's a level of trust and stress, but it's really fun. And when you nail it, it's like, oh wow, we did this together. So I like to, jump onto different mediums and just challenge myself. And the other thing I was going to say too, and you sort of said it, is like every once in a while, pick a role that you are absolutely terrified to do. Like I might literally fall on my face, and I have a role that I did, and I was so proud of myself for doing it. But
What role?
it's a movie called Mariachi Gringo. It's exactly what you think. It's about a guy from New York who falls in love with mariachi music and moves to Guadalajara, becomes a musician. I don't sing. I don't play guitar. Guess what? The culmination of the film is me standing in the stage in Guadalajara, like with a huge orchestral mariachi band behind me singing. And I was like, what am I thinking? But I loved the experience. I loved the film. I fell in love with the music. I knew nothing about mariachi music. It's like, yeah, I would go to a restaurant and hear music in the background. But to actually learn the history of the performance, of where it came from, and how passionate people are about the music, and then shooting in Guadalajara and Mexico City and working with some incredible Mexican actors. And the filmmakers were actually American. Their experience was they were Tom Gustafson and his partner Corey wrote this script, but they work in casting, and I think they were shooting like Titanic, and they were down in Mexico, and they fell in love with the music, the culture, the people, and then wrote this story about an American who falls in love with this idea and is kind of lost in his life and moves down there and takes the wildest swing he ever could. And I thought this was going to be a disaster, but film actually turned out pretty well. And I was very proud of the work I did and taking that risk, you know? And it, again, some people might look at it and laugh. I was devastated when I first saw it because I was like, what was I thinking? But then as I started to watch it, I was like, oh no, this actually is just an interesting thing to have done in my life, in my career. And I'm really proud of it and proud of the work and proud that I just said, yeah, I'm going to try and do this. So far outside my you know, box, even just perform. I'm not a singer. Like, what am I thinking? Singing mariachi music. Like, this is insane, but I did it.
Yeah. Ashley, do you have a role that terrifies
Not
you?
like that.
We could find one for you.
Yeah. No, I think, well, I'm about to do a rom-com, like a proper rom-com that I'm the lead in, and that's not necessarily my area of expertise. I just recently took a comedy intensive because I just want to go into that space, but kind of felt like I don't just want to go and call it in and go like, oh yeah, it could be good. Like I want it to be great.
So you became a student again.
And so, yeah. And so, and it was, I mean, the class was really intense as its name suggested. But doing stuff
Comedy
like that
intensive,
right
no
now
laugh.
is like, honestly, someone's like, you should do stand up. And I said, we're not there yet.
Hey,
We're
we're
gonna
here. There's a spotlight. If we,
I'm so glad you asked.
You have a type 5? You have a type 5?
But I think that's like my next thing is just going into the world of comedy is something that's always been really terrifying to me. That I'm
what's
now
the
doing.
deal with
So,
demons?
In a year. Wait, what? Wants to kill
I
demons?
said, what's the deal with demons?
Yeah.
Is your comedy intensive right here?
No, that's it. That's all I
That's
got.
all you got.
I got a tight 10
Re-
seconds.
You have 3 jokes. Before we go and wrap up here, I want to take a question from the audience.
Yeah.
This is from Harlow. This is for both of you. It has to do with It Feeds. What was the most challenging scene
Is
to
Harlow
do?
here? Oh, hey,
Oh.
Hello. Oh, the most challenging scene. I feel like I had a hard time with the finding Jordan in the coffin because we were not we weren't very deep, and so we had to like fake like the depth of the shoveling. Like it was all just
shovels in half.
yeah, we cut the shovels in half.
Yeah.
Yes, we did. To make it realistic. And so I just remember like that was one of those things where I was like, oh man, I'm just not going to be good in this because my mind is like, make this fake shovel look real. And then like when you like got down to like I had to like straddle this thing, like it was like just a whole very technical. And I remember going like, oh yeah, this is not going to be great. But I feel like that honestly that chair rig was a little tricky because we had to do it so many times because it just wasn't working. But the film as a whole was pretty. Oh, and then I had to the last day or close to the last day, they had to the epic scene at the end with this like incredible costume was like pieced together and like they had spray painted that morning, and so like I was definitely breathing in fumes that I shouldn't have been breathing in, and like it's one of those things where I was like, oh, this is an independent film is what's happening right now. But it was just a really sweaty, difficult day where we all really had to band together to make it work. But I remember getting and we did a night shoot, and I remember just like walking in the house in the morning, and my mom was there watching my child and was just like, are you okay? Like, is everything okay? But it turned out great, so it's all worth it.
I found everything super enjoyable.
Oh
Nothing
yeah, that's
challenging.
great. He's like, I was in the air conditioning.
Yeah. No, I think there were two scenes that I found challenging. One was the moment after realizing that I'd shot my daughter. And to be honest, like I like the shot choice that Chad chose because they had a tight close up kind of over the body, and I was like, I'm giving it right now, and I'm breaking down. But I liked actually and when I first saw it, I was like, oh, that's interesting. He didn't use the close up because I knew that it was there, but I thought that there was something kind of interesting and a little more voyeuristic. It was like kind of like a 2-shot, and it was kind of like a wider shot of me like holding her, and I think you see the sort of like me cradling her a little better. So I actually thought like that body language and the composition of the shot was actually more interesting. But sometimes when you really go there, you're always like, man, you didn't even use the close up. Like, so that was a challenge because I was like literally, mourning the loss of my daughter who I was trying to save, and then I end up killing myself. Like, that's quite a tragedy. And then, and again, this is the joy and the kind of craziness of shooting an independent film. So there's a beautiful scene where Jordan comes running out of Randall's house, and Cynthia comes pulling up, and they hold each other in the street, and they fall down. And that night that they were shooting that was the same night that we were supposed to shoot the close-up of me in the truck driving, where I'm kind of breaking down after I leave the scene of the crime. And Chad was like, hey, listen, so we're really in a rush. We're running behind. We have to get to this huge moment between mother and daughter. This, it's a massive moment. So we have this hostess tray, which is like the little thing that they put the camera on to shoot inside of a car. He's like, but we don't have time to really shoot the scene. So we're setting up over here, all of our crew setting up. He's like, we're going to roll the camera. You by yourself are going to drive down the street bawling, and then wipe your face off, take your shirt off, and then drive back, because there was another truck shot where I had to be like determined, like after I've kidnapped Jordan. And I was like, okay. And I was like, so do you guys have like a focus puller or a monitor so you can see it? He's like, no, we don't have, like, we just had to set this up. So I was like, so I have one shot? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, okay. So drive down the street. I'm like, and they're like, are you ready? And I'm like, no, I'm ready. Okay, I got to hype myself up. Like, okay, start tearing up. I'm like, okay, let's drive. So then I go bawling, crying. And that's the shot that's in the movie, is the one take that we did. And then I get to the end of the street. By the way, I'm driving that big honking truck. And then I'm like, okay, we'll wipe my tears off, take my shirt off, turn around and drive back. And I see Chad at the end of the street, and he's like, how was it? And I was like, I don't know. And he's like, well, do you think it was in focus? And I was like, I don't know. And he's like, I think we got it. And then we just moved on. And I was like, that's it. So it wasn't actually challenging, because we did it really quickly, but I was kind of like, that's it? Like, what if it didn't work? What if I leaned back too far? He was like, were you in frame? And I was like, I wasn't paying attention to that. Like, I was crying. I don't know. So
This is where we like a little bit more budget.
yeah. But again, it's like, he knew. He was just like, he was like, I know we have it. He's like, the way that we set up the frame, it's like you would have to like be like leaning back, or like, head in your lap to be out of the frame. And I would have to have like leaned into the like center console to be out of focus. But he was just asking. I was like, I don't know. So just things like that are kind of challenging, but also like, then you see it and you're like, oh, totally great, works fine. So sometimes you can overdo things and worry about them, and it's just like, we got that in one take. All right, yeah, no worries.
I would say it worked out.
I did.
You did.
It was
good.
fine.
It looked
It was
great.
fine.
It was a
It
good
was fine.
scene.
It
Yeah.
was fine.
Looked fine.
I was crying.
That
Keep going.
is like the kind of nice thing about Independence too. Is like, like I could just go full out because we have 2 takes.
Well, yeah, that's actually a good point. It's like, okay, well, we're
Doesn't
shooting a
exhaust you.
scene in Twilight or an X-Men for 2 days, and like you're supposed to cry, and it's like, so I have to now maintain that,
Yeah.
and then it's like, well, by the time they and they shoot the profile, they shoot the 2-shot.
Well, and you want the body language, so the wide, they're like, don't do it full out,
Yeah.
but you want your body language.
Yeah,
like
you
said
want
in
to
this
give it,
thing,
and they
yeah.
might choose that wide. And
Yeah.
like on a giant movie screen, it's like, well, I can see that you're crying. Like I can actually feel that. It's like on a tiny monitor, you're like, oh yeah, you're tiny, don't worry about
You're
it. But it's
fine.
like on a 40-foot screen, you're like, no, you can tell that I was phoning that in, or I wasn't like really hooked in. And then it's frustrating when it's like, well, you finally get to your close up and you're like, I got no more juice. Like it's done. And that's
It's
happened to
so
me. I'm like, oh
frustrating.
man, what am I gonna do?
Tear stick.
Yeah, tear stick. Yeah, don't shun a tear stick.
if
you need it.
If you've had to cry for 2 days.
Yeah, a little menthol in your eyeballs really helps. That's true. Absolutely.
I've learned so much.
Oh yeah, yeah.
in this
Oh yeah, no, they it's not good for you either. That menthol stick, they don't really want
I don't recommend using it.
Yeah.
Ever. if
But
you
boy,
don't
does
have
it work.
to. Yeah.
Boy, does it work.
But if you need it, do you know what I find with that too? Sometimes is that once you like, I've had to use it once, and
You're like just once.
once, but once you start crying, then like you're in it and you're
Yeah.
good, and then you don't need
Yes,
it anymore.
yeah.
It's like the muscle memory of your eyeballs.
Well, congratulations on this film, and thank you so much for being here and sharing.
Thanks for
all your
watching, guys.
insights.
Thanks
This is
for being
awesome.
here.
Ashley Greene and Shawn Ashmore, everyone.